But this isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer. I have to sort this out on my own. Without the Council. And without you. I won't leave you! Not this time.
Our story begins at the pivotal moment during the Clone Wars, where Ahsoka Tano, Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, is accused of a crime she didn't commit. However, in this alternate universe, rather than leaving the Jedi Order when it's discovered she didn't commit the crime, and rather it was Barriss Offee, she gives the Jedi another chance and benefit of the doubt of it being a time of uncertainty, being that they were at war, and she decides to stay on as Anakin's Padawan. In canon, when Ahsoka leaves the Order, this is a crushing blow to the mental health of Anakin Skywalker, and one of the main reasons why he loses faith in the Jedi Council. It helped push Anakin further to the dark, and made it much easier for him to turn when the time came. However, with Ahsoka still at his side, Anakin's light to dark side meter would still be well into the light side. For those of you that play Knights of the Old Republic, you know what I'm talking about. For the most part, the Clone Wars continue more or less the same way. Just with Ahsoka at Anakin's side, meaning the Republic would win a bit more battles than they were supposed to, at least by Palpatine's measure. Anakin has a bit of an easier time staying in the light side and balancing his love life with Padme, knowing he also had the support of his Jedi Padawan, who was also very close to him. Let's fast forward a bit further into a pivotal moment of the Clone Wars, right before the Siege of Mandalore. Due to the great success in her missions and battles, and being trained by the Chosen One, Ahsoka Tano was recently knighted. She was around 17 or 18 at the time, but it was still pretty uncommon for Jedi to be granted the rank of knight that early. Still, this of course made Anakin a proud Jedi in his own right for training her, and also let Anakin have a slightly more favored view of the Council for making this decision. Now he just wondered when they would make him a master. Well, keep wondering. Let's continue the story at hand. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are discussing their plans to aid Bo-Katan in the Siege of Mandalore, just when they receive word that Coruscant is under attack by the droid General Grievous. This time, rather than Obi-Wan and Anakin going to stop Grievous and save the Chancellor, it's Anakin and Ahsoka, who still had great chemistry from working together and sticking together through this time, and their fellow Jedi Knights now. Besides, it was Obi-Wan who still has this bone to pick with Mandalore and the possibility of Darth Maul still lurking there. Well, formerly Darth. He had unfinished business after the death of his love, Satine. So, it was decided. Anakin and Ahsoka would go to save the Chancellor in the fight over Coruscant, and Obi-Wan would lead the attack at the Siege of Mandalore. This time, the 212th Attack Battalion is available, so there's no need to divide the 501st. Obi-Wan leads Commander Cody and the rest of the 212th in the Siege of Mandalore, while Anakin and Ahsoka take the 501st to Coruscant. Over the fight at Coruscant, events proceed similar to that of the movies where Anakin and Obi-Wan infiltrate the main droid command ship. This time, though, it's Ahsoka and Anakin. And they're a little bit more prepared and work a little bit better together. Honestly, it's partly due to Anakin just having a more clear level mind. You see, when Ahsoka left Anakin, this weighed heavily on him for really the rest of his life. I mean, that was really a pivotal moment in his development. So for Ahsoka to still be at his side, it's allowed him to make clear decisions. They would find the Chancellor who was being guarded by Dooku, and Ahsoka and Anakin would easily be able to work together to subdue Dooku. And this time, when Palpatine would demand the death of Dooku, Anakin's more level-headed mind, along with Ahsoka not being knocked out, they would decide that's the right thing for him to stand trial and would not heed the Chancellor Palpatine's word. This would sort of force Palpatine's hand and make Palpatine extremely nervous. Checking in with Obi-Wan, at the Siege of Mandalore, things were going well. With the entire 212th Battalion aiding his cause, they were able to rout the Mandalorians pretty well, and he was engaged in combat with Maul. Maul kept rambling on about how there was a bigger hand at play controlling everything before their eyes, but Obi-Wan would not have it. He had a score to settle after all, and the Master of Sorsu would go on to defeat Maul once and for all, and lifting the Siege of Mandalore. Obi-Wan would set course back to Coruscant. Now, Zooming back to Coruscant, Ahsoka and Anakin would have saved the Chancellor, and another subtle difference between that and the movies is that Ahsoka and Anakin would not allow Grievous to escape and would effectively destroy Grievous on the ship, then and there. With Dooku captured and Grievous destroyed, the Clone Wars were essentially on the brim of being ended. There was no true leadership left in the Separatists, and Palpatine was shaking in his boots now. Now, when they get back to Coruscant, Palpatine was really shaking in his boots and needed to find the right moment to enact Order 66 quickly. But there's one thing he needed to do prior to that, and that was he needed a new apprentice, now with Dooku out of the picture and being captured. So he attempted to deploy the Force visions of Anakin losing his wife, Padme. However, this time, when Anakin's back at home, staying with Padme and having these Force visions of his death, he's concerned, of course, for his wife, but this time, he has someone he knows well enough and trusts to talk about. And he talks with Ahsoka Tano and reveals the fact that Padme is in danger, or at least he thinks, and his secret love life. And Ahsoka informs him that she had always suspected the love life between them. However, it wasn't a big deal to her, and she honestly thought that the Council and the Jedi should be more lenient on love life. It was here, though, where Ahsoka would give Anakin the much-needed comfort compared to that of when Anakin would go to Yoda asking for help in the movies, where Yoda would say, just let your wife die. You know, obviously not knowing that's who he was talking about. But here, Ahsoka would give the support Anakin would need and be there for him in his time of greatest conflict, assuring him that she would not allow anything to happen to Padme and everything was all right. And somehow the Sith must be behind this, or there must be a greater explanation to why these visions were happening. Now, only a couple days had passed since the capture of Dooku, and when Anakin would go to report to Chancellor Palpatine of Obi-Wan's victory over the siege of Mandalore, it was here where Palpatine would try to make his move to try to turn Anakin and explain only through him would he have the power to save his wife. And it was here where Anakin absolutely loses it. And he was not having any of it. And he said he would go turn him into the Jedi. And this time he was way less conflicted about it with the support of Ahsoka. So Anakin returned to the Jedi Temple and talked with Mace Windu and Ahsoka Tano, explaining that Palpatine was the Sith Lord they were looking for. This time, Palpatine sensed that his attempt to turn Anakin had failed, and this completely forced his hand to panic. The only thing he had left was Order 66, and he needed to act quickly for it to happen. So Palpatine would enact Order 66 in an attempt to wipe out the Jedi. This time, though, it wouldn't be as successful, as the Jedi weren't as spread out as they were at the end of the Revenge of the Sith, specifically with masters like Jedi Master Yoda, who was still at the temple at the time, Mace Windu, Ahsoka, and Anakin, and a stroke of bad luck would hit Palpatine. Due to him being in a panic state, he would forget to send the order to all battalions of clones, and forgot that the 212th Battalion of Clone Troopers were at a different sector. So Obi-Wan, who still was with the 212th Battalion, and Commander Cody would never receive Order 66. So when they would return to Coruscant to see troopers marching on the Jedi Temple, the 212th would see them as the traitors and enacting treason. So Obi-Wan and the 212th Battalion would aid in the rest of the Jedi, and with the combined strength of Ahsoka, Mace Windu, and Yoda at the temple, they would fight off the 501st. Anakin was, of course, very conflicted fighting the 501st, but he had no choice. In this time of uncertainty, he would do anything to make sure that the Jedi were safe and Padme were safe. And with the failure of Operation Nightfall, all that was left was the confrontation of the Dark Lord of the Sith. Anakin, Mace Windu, Yoda, and Ahsoka would go to Chancellor Palpatine's office and confront him. It was here where Palpatine would play dumb and act as if he had no idea why Order 66 had happened. And well, playing dumb just wouldn't work, as prior to this, they had just gotten the confession they needed from Dooku behind bars, confirming the fact that Chancellor Palpatine was indeed the Dark Lord of the Sith. That, combined with the demanding of Dooku to be killed immediately, was enough for Anakin and the rest of the Jedi to confront him. This time, with the Chosen One on the side of the light side, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda, and Ahsoka against Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious was powerful, but he stood no chance, and he attempted his fourth scream and to take out the weaker Jedi first, but in this case, the Jedi were prepared and simply too much of a match for him. And Anakin and Ahsoka together put an end to the Sith. Now, there were still many Jedi that were slain due to the botched Order 66 because, there's millions of clones in the galaxy, and many Jedi died. But with the Chancellor dead and some clones not receiving Order 66, it was easy enough to stop the remaining clones that still believed in Order 66 and that the Jedi were truly treasonous, and with the help of other clones convincing their brothers to lay down the arms and that the Chancellor was evil and the Sith Lord. In due time, the galaxy would be in peace. Now, many Jedi died, but this story would have a much more peaceful ending than that of the movies. Anakin would go on to take a temporary leave from the Order to help raise his kids with his wife Padme, and Luke and Leia were born, and they were force sensitive like their father. And in this world, Ahsoka would visit them frequently and kind of act like an aunt of sorts and a great family friend. Now, Obi-Wan would be the older kind of uncle figure in the family, but for the most part, the galaxy would go on to live in peace, and just highlights the fact that one small moment in a story or anyone's life can change so much. With Ahsoka Tano being at Anakin Skywalker's side, you can see just how much of a butterfly effect that would happen and how many events that would change. I ultimately do believe if Ahsoka was still at Anakin's side, Anakin never would have fully turned to the dark side. I really think that's one of those pivotal moments that really was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, obviously the visions of Padme was really that straw, but getting those visions wouldn't be enough to fully push Anakin to the dark side. With that reassurance of Ahsoka, and Anakin overall would have a more favored view of the Council because of their treatment of Ahsoka, and allowing her to be back in the Order and ultimately her not leaving. He just has a more favorable view on the whole situation. So the galaxy would continue in peace. Eventually, Anakin would reveal to the Jedi that he was having relations with Padme, and they didn't like it at first, but being that he ultimately helped them end the Sith, they would make accommodations and attempt to be more lenient in the future. Well, that wraps up today's video. Stay tuned next week, guys. We will have part 2 of What If Qui-Gon Jinn Survived. A lot of you guys return but are not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.